The worst thing that could ever happen to creating is to struggle to develop a concept for any project. It doesn't matter the industry, from graphic design, architecture design, interior design, product design, or what have you. Even fashion design, if you struggle to develop a concept for your design, it's a nightmare. When you go through those sketches and you're still not satisfied to what to present the client or how to develop your project, it's a nightmare. So in this video, we're going to look at 4 things that could guide you on how to develop a concept for any project. So the first thing is stay user friendly or be user centered. And it's basically about keeping the user in mind, right? Ask the WH question: who is going to use it? Why is it being designed? What is the purpose of this design, right? You ask and answer these questions, and that will give you a guide on how to develop the first stage for the concept. And the second, number 2, is be authentic, right? You have to be authentic. And it's just as Pablo Picasso said, good artists, they copy, and great artists steal. You have to learn how to steal, borrow concepts, borrow elements from designs that you see around. And when it comes to this one, I have 3 principles that I normally use, or 3 principles that guides me on how to develop a concept, which is when you're designing, you design from known to unknown, or you design from unknown to unknown, and the last one, you design from unknown to known. And it might sound a little bit tricky, but when you're designing from unknown to known, is basically you try to sketch out anything, or you try to doodle, or you grab figures, or let's say you grab figures, let's say Legos. You could grab Legos. Lego is a good way to start. Or you use the Pathfinder in Illustrator to just combine shapes, and you just mess around. So in this process, you are messing around in the unknown path because you don't know what you're going to come up with, right? You mess around, you just be playful, right? Be playful, but artistically, right? You do that, and you realize that whilst you are in that space, just combining elements together here and there, you realize that something is going to emerge from the unknown, and it pulls you into the known space. Have a mess, and in the mess, you are able to extrapolate something from it. It's just like when they say there's order in chaos. That's exactly what it means. It's pretty much like you start off from the unknown, and from the unknown you have a known element or a known factor for the design. So that is the first one. And the second one is when you're designing, you design from unknown to unknown. But this one is pretty similar with the first one, where you start off with something that you don't know and you end up with something that you know, which is familiar. However, here you end up with something that you don't know, something which is not familiar to you, but you still think it's usable. You still think it's user friendly. You still think it can meet the function of what you are designing for. When you take up Frank Gary's designs, for instance, or let's bring in Kanye West's designs, for instance, or Zaha Hadid, for instance, you realize that most of their designs looks very iconic. They started off with an unknown, right? And they end up with an unknown. However, in the process, they realize that, this thing could be useful. This thing can apply to this. This thing can be used here. And that is how you become creative. And that is how you'll be able to develop a creative mindset for your designs. If I go deeper in explaining the creative aspects of designing in this process, you would realize that it's more like whenever they ask you to be a creative designer, it's like you have to create rather than designing. So for instance, if they ask you to design a transportation vehicle or to design a bicycle, the elements of a bicycle, two wheels with a paddle, with a handle and a seat, it's already in function. So when you are designing a bicycle, you just have to take the two wheels with a paddle and a seat and a handle, the shape of the seat, or put the handle a bit higher, or the wheels make it bigger or thicker, then you are designing it. But to create a new form of bicycle, it's a whole different story, because when you're creating from the unknown. You cannot create something that you know. You can never create something that you already know. You only create from the unknown. However, when you design something that is already known. You get it? You only design something that's already in existence, because you can design a car because they have the shape and the model already there. You can design a bag because the layout and everything is already set. So you take the bag and you slap a picture on it, or you open the zipper to the side or to the front. You are designing the element which is already there. But when you are creating, I say it again, you can only create from the unknown. You understand? It's just as the Bible says that God created from what? From darkness. There was no light, and everything was in a mess. So in the mess, there's no form. It was just scattered. So from the mess, and God created something. So it's the same. I feel like it's the same approach to creativity. Whenever you want to design something, whenever you want to create something, you only can create from the unknown. So that's point number 2, design from unknown to unknown. Number 3 is when you're designing, you design from known to unknown, which is you start off with something that you're familiar, and as you design, you would introduce foreign elements to it. So for instance, if you're struggling with a concept, and what you would do is you take your site layout, and you offset and you pull, and this would be somehow the beginning of the form of your building, which works 70% of the time. It works and it's not a problem. However, you could start as that. And the second one is, if you want to start from your bubble diagram, you could start from that with the function traffic. You could use that as well to develop the concept, right? These is proven ways that always work for concept development, and there's not a problem to it. So this is the known, a concrete factor. And unknown, you would want to introduce in elements that are foreign. Maybe, for example, if you're designing a museum, right? You would just go off and do the usual form or the usual way of designing a museum. However, moving on, you would have to introduce a special feature to it. Whatever museum is about, if it's about dinosaurs, then you would want to introduce a kind of space or bone of a T-Rex to design the form. You would have to use weird and interesting factors, elements, to as unknown factors for this building to stand out. But if you take the Louvre in France, for instance, I am paid design that building, and as a museum, it's just a historical building which works well. However, he introduced this pyramid, and if you think of the pyramid for ancient times, we all thought is for dead bodies, right? It's for the mummies and the Egyptian gods. However, it's a foreign element which I am introduced to this form of design, right? So he brought in a foreign element with history. You realize that the history is the Egyptian history, which is a pyramid, right? And he's designed a museum. And museums also deals with history, right? So foreign elements which has nothing to do, Egypt, France, they don't really have anything to do with each other. So he borrows that foreign element and he brings it in. And the Louvre, you cannot speak of the Louvre without this glass pyramid at its center. So this is a form of design which starts off a known design to an unknown factor. Yes. So that is the three ways, that's the three principles that guides me in design. And you start off of the known, the known to unknown, and known to unknown, or unknown to known. All these principles, you can intertwine them anyhow that works for you. You could just pick one of them and use it. And with number 3, you have to keep it simple. I like to call it KISS, KISS. Keep it so simple, right? That's rule number 3. You keep it so simple. So after you have gone through the first stage of asking yourself who is going to use it, why is it going to be used, and what is going to be used for, and the second stage, to be authentic, and the third stage is you keep it simple. After being creative, you have to break it down so that people can accept it. You don't want to go to the extremes, and it's hard for people to get used to it, because you have to accept that human beings, we have habits that we gravitate towards. So you cannot be too extreme pushing the boundaries, and it's hard for people to accept. They have to form a new learning curve to just adapt to your device, which it might take some time for people to get. And if you don't mind that, then it's fine. You can just go to the extreme. But it's very important to keep it simple so that you have the user in mind, so that it wouldn't be so difficult for people to adjust using your design or your products or what have you. And yes, that's rule number 3. And rule number 4 is to make your design tell a story. Let your design tell a story. That is so important. Whatever that you design, whatever that you create, from having it user-centered, user-friendly, for it being authentic, drawing inspirations from different centers and putting it together, and also is keeping it so simple. It's very important to have a story behind. And if it has a story, it's easier for people to relate to. It's easier for people to gravitate towards. It's easier for people to accept it and buy into it. You get it? So that's rule number 4. Let your design tell a story. All right? So that is all for today. I hope I inspired you. Peace out.